Hello, everybody. Welcome to Instrumental Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Shankin. Instrumental Breakthroughs is a project of Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration, and its purpose is to explore the intersection between psychedelics and creativity. We explore the origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. Glad you're here. I would like to give shout outs to our co-producers, Brian Markowitz at Deadheadland. Go to deadheadland.com, and our tech folks at Livestream Remote. Thank you so much, Skylar, for helping put this together. So our guest today is an old friend. His work is psychedelic, unusual, dark, beautiful, and elegant. It seeks to illuminate experience that are outside the realm of normal waking consciousness, moving into numinous and visionary realms with natural ease. His work explores the interplay of shadow and light, both in delicate modeling of the forms of his pictures, but also in the character of the subjects he portrays. His work shows a willingness to embrace all aspects of emotion, from revelation and peace to fear and disharmony. He considers himself an interdimensional midwife and conduit, believing that the role of the artist is to be able to move outside of themselves and to act as a conduit for higher consciousness to move through them. In this way, he says, I do not claim authorship for any of the works that I have painted. I am a channel for the Great Spirit to create through me. He's also a tattoo artist, right? You're a tattoo artist and a musician and a mural painter and a very good friend. And a jewelry designer. Please welcome everybody. Jake Kobrin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. We're doing it again. Remember we did that podcast like years ago, back when you did the VR thing?
Right. I think this is actually our third podcast because I did one of your Instagram podcasts.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll be able to release our own, DVD of just our podcasts.
Yeah.
Kind of like when, I guess, Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida just wrote their letters back and forth.
It would be on the same level for sure. Yeah. And I'm sure the readership would be as avid as those two. People would probably make many hours of lectures about our correspondences.
I think we should go for it. Although, I heard something really interesting about the post office in London back in those days, that apparently they would deliver mail like 3 or 4 times a day.
Well, so it was World War II also. Like there were like bombs going off all over like London all the time. Mm-hmm. It was probably not the peak of mail in London. That would be my guess.
Maybe it was earlier than that, but I think some of these correspondences that happened in the UK, you could write somebody a letter and say, hey, will you meet me for lunch? And then they would write you back and say yes, and then you would go to lunch and then be like, hey, that was a nice lunch. I was thinking about what you said, and here's this. And you could have like an email kind of thing if you lived in downtown London.
Huh.
But that is really, we're not here to talk about London. We're here to talk about you. So one of the places we like to start is we kind of like to start at the beginning, and we're kind of curious about psychedelic breakthroughs that may have fueled your creative vision or your creative path or things of that nature.
Yeah.
You think you have one in mind?
I've got a few. Yeah. I mean, I remember for me, I always think about my first mushroom journey. It wasn't necessarily the most kind of visually spectacular psychedelic experience, or necessarily even the most creatively formative, but the first time I took mushrooms was just such a profound awakening experience. It was an initiatory experience, and it forever changed the way I look at the world. And that shift of awareness forever changed the way I create art, and when I look at my art from that time period, I think that there is a very clear shift and distinction from before that experience and after it. My work became a lot more, at least, enraptured with the ideas around consciousness existing beyond a material basis, you know? So like prior to that experience, a lot of my work was a little bit kind of more normal or something like that. And then after that, my work started really stretching out into more surreal and kind of visionary territory. I remember the first work of art I created after that experience was for a group show in San Francisco, and it was Memento Mori, which means remember your mortality. So all the artists created works of art related to death. And I created this image that was a pencil drawing of the skull that had all of these eyes emerging out from its third eye, with the idea that based upon my experiences, I was assuming that our consciousness exists far beyond the bounds of our material form. So yeah, that was a very influential experience for me in regards to just my whole life, but also my creativity. And then I, you know, probably the first time or one of the first times I took LSD, I took it by myself and just sat with a sketchbook and drew the entire time. And that was amazing as well. I remember it was as if my hand was being guided by something. It was as if I was looking at the image on the paper before I had the chance to draw it. And it was more like tracing. And it was unbelievable. I had never experienced anything like that before. You know, it was automatic drawing, but in a like a bizarrely accurate and precise way. You know, it wasn't just like haphazard scribbling. It was like every line was perfect and precise, but I wasn't the one doing it, or at least like the decisions were coming from the ego self, you know. And I've had a lot of those kinds of experiences making art under the influence of psychedelics. And it's those kinds of experiences sometimes have lent themselves to little creative breakthroughs, little light bulb moments that have completely shifted the direction of my art afterwards.
Do you still get some of that? Do you still those things carry over, this automatic drawing, this ability to trace images that are not yet there?
I think that was like an especially kind of exaggerated experience, you know. It's not always like that, but I think all of these, yeah, like what I said, I have these little breakthrough experiences sometimes through the use of psychedelics that have then carried over now, like probably for the rest of my life, like realizations around either technical things or like, you know, creative ideas, or just how to access different creative states that now I don't need to be on psychedelics to have that same awareness. It's just programmed in there, you know, like
Right.
I've seen the light and there's no going back now.
Nice. You know, I really am, I mean, a little envious. I'm really kind of inspired by this idea of, you know, taking the LSD and then just being so enraptured in your work. You know, this idea of kind of just honing in and just being kind of in love with what you're doing that much.
I'm jealous of it too. I mean, it hasn't been as much of a it wasn't a repeatable experiment, you know?
Right.
And it's not always like that. And I mean, Jesus, I've made some horrible works of art on psychedelics too. Like sometimes it's like I literally don't even remember how to draw or paint. And also sometimes it's like to do that is almost like an insult to the experience, in where it seems like it's more about just sort of surrendering to that experience and being present to it, not trying to produce something from it. Like you're not exploiting it for a particular creative purpose, but rather just to be with that experience, you know?
Well, I mean, where does that end? Because, you know, you being with the experience to some extent, I mean, to what extent do you there identify with being an artist, right? Because if you're just being with the experience, are you being with the experience as an artist? You being with the experience as a meditator, or?
Well, I think that's
Who's
something
showing
that's
up?
profound. Something that's profound about the psychedelic experience is that it often transcends our identifications, right? So, like, something that makes that experience so beautiful is that there's times where I'm in that experience and I don't identify with being the artist. I don't identify with being the meditator or anything. And I can
Mm-hmm.
just be for once, because like maybe sometimes being the artist is a burden, or maybe sometimes being the meditator is a burden. They're all like constrictions of the self, like
Mm-hmm.
limitations that we put on ourselves. And it's nice to sometimes just exist.
Yes. Yeah, I feel you for sure. So tell me more about that burden thing.
I just mean that any
Okay.
identification is a burden upon our consciousness, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm identified with being an artist, that comes with a lot of different sort of rules and stipulations into what that means and how I have to behave. And if I act one way, is this in alignment with that identity or not? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not who I am fundamentally. I am an artist, but I'm not an artist. Like, I am something way beyond that. And it
Yes.
can be so easy to be shackled by those self concepts. And I think that that's something that actually probably, I think anybody really deals with it. And it's almost like how this idea that Ram Dass talks about, that for him it was more about becoming nobody, but like the more of
Mm-hmm.
a somebody you become. So if you become recognized as an artist, you become recognized as a podcaster or anything, the more you become recognized and an identity is reaffirmed over and over, the more you become limited by those identifications, and the more it feels like you're confined.
Yeah. You know who you're reminding me of? You made me think of for whatever reason. Do you remember Sam Kinison?
Sam Kinison, not sure.
Maybe he might have passed a little before your time. He was a minister. He was like a preacher, and then he became a comedian,
Uh-huh.
and it was
Yeah.
very bizarre, I think, for the people who knew him. And he just kind of burst out onto the scene with like all of this outrage, but also like the fire and brimstone. He had taken like the tools that he had learned as to
Hmm.
kind of whip people up into a frenzy and work them into a crowd, and work them up into, work the crowd, and then started using it to make people laugh. And it was just really interesting watching him shift roles and
Hmm.
to kind of have a skill set that transcended identity, a way of being perhaps in the world that kind of transcended I the role that he was used to playing, and he, kind of enabled him to find more freedom.
Hmm.
And then he died of a drug overdose, unfortunately.
That's what happens when you become a stand-up comedian. It's rough.
It's rough. Yeah, but I mean that
Seems
is
seems
another
to be,
role.
actually.
It
It
really
has been
does
rough
seem
on a
to
lot of
be
people.
the the burden of that, the burden of, I guess, always having to be on.
Right.
So what are you working on these days?
Well, I've been working on that tarot project that you and I have been talking about for years, and actually making progress on it, which is exciting.
Amazing. Right over my shoulder here is the Two of Swords.
Cool. Yeah, that was probably an ancestor to this series of
Mm-hmm.
work that will be significantly more accomplished than that little guy. But
Why
yeah.
don't you tell folks what's important to you, why you like the Tarot Card Project? Like, why is this something that has been sort of, perhaps burdening, tormenting you, calling you, evoking you for all of these years?
Well, the tarot is the greatest condensation of esoteric symbolism into a digestible image format that has ever existed. So it's basically the entire library of wisdom from the Western esoteric tradition condensed into a 72 image visual system that can be read like a book but transcends language, because visual symbols are of greater potency than, you know, descriptive words that you might, if you read about these things like in books. You can basically take hundreds and hundreds of books and condense it down into it. And it's basically a map as well of all the different sort of nuances of nature, basically the different variants of existence that manifest on a day-to-day, both in internal and external qualities of life, and both personal and interpersonal. So the tarot attracts me because of its potency, you know, because it's truly visionary art, in the sense that it's, the intention of the tarot is to be able to imbue the viewer with a profound sense of like awareness, to have realization and awakening through the use of visual symbols.
Mm-hmm. What was your first deck?
I think that I acquired the Tarot de Marseille from an ex-girlfriend, and I eventually burned that tarot deck when we broke up, so I don't have it anymore. But that was my first tarot deck. Yeah, but
so that sounds like a powerful ritual. Will you tell me about the ritual of? So you're saying all of the condensed wisdom of the universe is in the tarot deck, and then you set it on fire. Well, and then you set it on fire.
It's a lot like how, you know, they do the sand mandalas, right? It's the same thing. They're like, here's this, the Tibetan sand mandalas. They create the sand mandala. It's like a representation of the universe and the cosmos, and then they destroy it, and it represents the cycles of birth and death, and, you know, samsara, and also the liberation of that. So yeah, maybe inadvertently I did that subconsciously. I was pretty much just trying to burn anything that reminded me of her, and it was more of it from a place of like adolescent angst. But yeah, could have inadvertently been a really profound act.
Those would be some rad ashes to have.
They would be. You know, it'd also be a pretty rad tarot deck to have. I kind of wish I didn't burn it looking back, but I could always get another Marseille tarot deck if I wanted. It's not my favorite deck.
Some of them, the colors are off. I had a deck, and you actually gave me a book on the Marseille tarot. And the colors that they reference in the book were different than the ones that I had in the deck that I had.
Well, the book I gave you, I believe, was the one by Alejandro Jodorowsky. He actually restored the Marseille deck. So he has his own Marseille deck that has all the restored colors and things like that to his specifications.
Sure.
But I'm more into, you know, like the Thoth deck is the deck that I work with the most. I think it's the most beautiful of the major tarot decks, and love Lady Frida Harris's psychedelic renditions of the images. And yeah, I mean, it's also like it's an initiated tarot deck, you know, so it corresponds to the Tree of Life, which the Marseille deck doesn't. And I think that that's important, because it's like there's evolutions and the technology of the tarot, if you will, that have, there's been different iterations over time. So I'm aspiring to create, I'm working on only the major arcana, but it's my aspiration to create a true initiated tarot deck, one that's true to the symbolism as it relates to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, to the Hebrew alphabet, things like that. Astrology.
What do you mean? So go a little deeper, if you don't mind, into what you mean by initiated.
Well, I mean, there are these initiated systems. So there are the Order of the Golden Dawn, for example, was a initiated. It was a system to create initiates. It was a system to have people undergo various practices, rituals, rites, to be initiated into deeper mysteries, and to be able to uncover hidden or secret or occult knowledge through the development into these systems. So the Golden Dawn is kind of like the forefather of most of the modern systems of initiation, but then there are others that came after that, like the Astrum Argentum, which I'm actually a probationary member of, as well as the Order of the Silver Star, and, you know, the Initiate's Order of Thunteros and things like this. So these kinds of secret societies is similar to Freemasonry. However, what distinguishes it is that Freemasonry is primarily a fraternal brotherhood, whereas the Order of the Golden Dawn is a magical order. And the things that have come after it, like the AA, are also magical orders to attempt to not just create a sense of community, but to help with basically with the evolution of one's consciousness. So the tarot decks that are primary, the major tarot decks nowadays, like the Rider-Waite deck or the Thoth deck, they came out of these initiate orders to basically be teaching implements for the students of the orders, but also to visually codify and encapsulate their teachings into a visual system. So something I just noticed with a lot of modern tarot decks is that they deviate from those traditional attributions and correspondences. And so out of respect for the tradition of tarot, it's my intention to create a true tarot deck, like to stay true to the traditional correspondences and symbols.
As opposed to, you know, just an oracle deck.
Yeah. I mean, and people just get a bit too, in my opinion, a little bit too simplistic. Like they'll have the lovers and they'll just be like two people kissing, or, you know, just whatever's kind of like the most surface level, obvious imagery you could think of based on the title of it. Like, oh, Death card, oh, Grim Reaper, you know, whereas those are only that's only the tip of the iceberg in regards to what the meanings of each of the cards are. So it's my role as an artist to probe deeper into meanings of the cards and to create imagery that reflects the deeper contemplation of the symbols, rather than they're just the most simplistic versions of them based on their names.
Right. They all have, you know, for those of you out there who haven't really looked, there are correspondences to astrology and the planets, and to letters and other alphabets, you know, the Hebrew letters, and alchemical processes, right? Like the death card has, will you finish that sentence?
Well, I mean, with alchemical processes, temperance probably, or the art card, as it's called in Thoth, is probably the most obvious one, which is the marriage of masculine and feminine, which may or may not be a symbol for sex magic. But the union of polarities to give birth to something new, hence the card being named art in the Thoth deck. But
right.
yeah,
Okay. You're reminding me of some things, because it's kind of been a while since I've really studied. But in a Thoth deck, there are symbols that even travel throughout the major arcana, right? So it's sort of like the red lion and the white eagle, and they sort of travel throughout. And then I think in the temperance or the art card, they switch colors and things like that. Is that
I'll have
correct?
to take a closer look. I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, that sort of represents that, you know, that the spell worked, that this union of opposites actually did what it was supposed to do. And so there are these various little symbols that follow you around as, you know, you grow on the path, was my understanding.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I haven't noticed that before. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, all of these kind of little critters. And so which one is really your mind? Where's your mind at these days? Like, which card are you in?
I've been working on the Lovers card right now.
Okay.
And it's like, this is a long project, you know, and I understand that. And so it's taking me a while I'm not anywhere close to finishing this first painting, but for whatever reason, that's the one that's kind of jumped out as the most immediate, clear vision to start with. So I'm working on the Lovers, and then I have drawings for a number of the cards already made as well, like the Hanged Man and Adjustment and the Fool, and I have a a pretty clear image in mind for the magus, and yeah, it's like they're coming through kind of spontaneously, not not in order at all, but just whatever one seems to just be coming through in any given day.
Sure. And what do you make that mean?
I guess that's just, well, I mean, it could be like the archetypal energy, right? That like is really existing in my life. Like I've been in a love cycle, so maybe that's why the Lover's card is coming through for me right now.
Right. I mean, it almost feels like you're receiving your own tarot card reading.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I worry about that too, because like when it comes time to like paint the tower or paint, the death card or the devil or whatever, it's like I'm not trying to summon that upon me. I'd rather summon the lovers upon me, or like the magus or the high priestess or something. The empress would be nice.
The empress would be nice. There are different ways to have things topple, though. Like this tower, this kind of. One of my teachers once told me that you can get hit in the head with like a bean, or you can get hit in the head with like a can of beans, or you can get hit in the head with like a case of a can of beans. And then part of the reason we do our practice, to kind of like smooth out our karmas, so we get the single bean.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know what the tower feels like. Like we've all been there where basically our entire lives get rocked and changed dramatically. But I think it does come down to mindfulness to a certain degree, and how kind of, like how well you can navigate those circumstances, like what your state of mind is that you bring to that, like to not, like the same circumstance could befall several people and they could have dramatically different reactions to it. So it comes down to your reactions to it. And it's ultimately always a good thing, right? Like the tower, it's kind of a cleansing of things that aren't real. Like if it can crumble so easily, then it wasn't built with a strong enough foundation to begin with. And it's something that had to go.
Right. Because in the tarot card focuses so heavily on like the 4 elements, and then that which is beyond the 4 elements, right? That which can't be crushed by earth or drowned by water or blown by wind or burned by fire, kind of thing. And so the tower, and then also it's to the extent, it's been coming up for me a lot lately. A lot of my clients have been talking about the 4 agreements. Which is something I sort of glossed through. I was like, oh yeah, those sound nice, but I'm sort of working through them with my clients these days, and that don't take anything personally. As the tower is sort of, because what if like the tower fell and you're like, oh, right? It wouldn't be the tower. We suffer losses and disappointments, and things don't go exactly our way all the time, and then it's just how much do we care? How much does it hurt or not hurt? And some of that's up to us.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
I'm curious, I forget some of the associations with the lovers. And if I'm getting too granular I don't know if I'm getting too granular with the tarot cards, but I just really dig them.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's generally associated with Gemini. So it's the card of Gemini. For me, it's off the top of my head, I can't tell you the path on the tree of life or the Hebrew letter that corresponds to it. It's number 6. Yeah, but like I should be able to. Just if I had real mastery over the tarot, I would know that stuff. But yeah, I look at it. The lovers for me is about different archetypes of love and union, right? So there is the union of lovers, but it also represents archetypally the union with God or higher source, right? And also the marriage of opposites and the reconciliation of light and darkness. So that's what I'm attempting to portray in my interpretation of it,
right.
you know?
And so you also said that you're a probationary member of the AA?
Yeah, the Astrum Argentum.
And so are you a probationary member because you did something wrong and now you're in
No,
trouble? You're on probation?
no, and I'm getting kind of, in a way, an accelerated, I'm on a slightly accelerated schedule with it because I already had a lot of experience prior to it. But basically,
Oh, you're in the
there's
gifted program.
well, there's a curriculum that everybody follows, and just certain tasks that need to be realized. The way it works is that, and I appreciate the way it works, is that it's a testing order. So it's not like you don't get any special privileges by being in it for a long period of time. If you can pass the test, then you can initiate into higher grades. And if not, then you need to work on it until you have that. And, you know, so for me, there's just a certain number of tasks that I have to complete and certain practices that I need to undertake. I have like 4 practice periods every day that I do. So it's basically, you know, it's not as intense as being a monk or something like that, but there's just like 4 times throughout the day where I practice anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour of various forms of ritual work and meditation, as well as a lot of different reading and study of different subjects, and a lot of journaling. And so I'm doing that, and then, you know, that'll culminate in some bigger kind of tests that I need to undertake. I need to perform a very complex ritual and to have that all memorized. And, you know, so I'm working towards that, and I'm not rushing it. But the probationary kind of grade of the AA is basically the same as, like, you know, neophyte or even higher, like up to Adeptus Minor of the Golden Dawn. There's like 10 grades basically. And it's not something that is like supposed to be done quickly. Like, there's people that have been a part of the AA for like 30 years and they are, you know, on like the 6th or 7th grade. So it's a long process. It's like a lifetime of work. And really, I mean, the ultimate end goal of it is like, you know, enlightenment or realization or mastery. So those are lifetime pursuits, perhaps many lifetimes.
Sure. So that's a question. Does the work seem familiar? Are you aware that you have done this work in previous lifetimes, these practices?
Could be. I mean, I definitely have like an affinity towards what you could call magic or the Western esoteric tradition, a lot more so than I do, say, like Raja Yoga or something like that. Like, I appreciate that stuff, but I don't feel like I really want, like, I don't have this passion behind doing it. But there's something about these practices and these rituals, it just feels really, yeah, I don't know. It feels like a good match to my soul or something like that, you know. And there's a lot of similarities between like real esoteric, like Eastern Tantra as well, you know, like a lot of, there's a lot of what is essentially ceremonial magic in Tantra, whether it's from India or Tibet. So, I mean, that's something I'm also interested in exploring. And I don't mean Tantra like, you know, let's take mushrooms in the jacuzzi and like put on some sting and have tantric sex kind of Tantra, but like the real deal, you know, left-hand path, esoteric Tantra, that's like the occult of India, you know, that stuff is it's basically ceremonial magic.
Yeah. I was taught that, you know, there's 3 kinds of Tantra. There's, you know, the Hindu Tantras, and there's the Buddhist Tantras, and there's the California hot tub.
Exactly. Yeah. Or the Bali Tantra.
Right. Which is mostly just people who have from California.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So it's I like that you said that, because there are times when I'm reading one book or another and gleaning little bits out of them. I remember reading something by like Israel Regardie
Mm-hmm.
about, you know, when you intone the various mantras, or, you know, the names of God, that you envision it going, you know, infinitely out into space with full of light and something like that. And I was like, oh, I should be doing that with all mantra.
Yeah.
And I remember showing it to some of my yoga friends, and them kind of liking it, but also being a little nervous that the book wasn't a yoga book, that it was like an occult book.
Well, it is yoga. It is yoga though. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, but it didn't
I
fit
mean,
in with the, you know, it didn't fit into the rigid symbol system. You know, it didn't jive with their identity. We were talking about, you know, our strict identities.
right. I mean,
It was a little too spooky.
within the AA system, I mean, they use specifically the terminology from yoga, like asana, pranayama, pratyahara,
Mhm.
dharana, like, you know, yoga terms. Like they borrow heavily from yoga within the system. So, you know,
Well,
it
that's
is
good.
yoga.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. You know, you were talking about, you know, the different kinds of love and union. And, you know, sometimes I bemoan the fact that, you know, English kind of only has like one or two words for love. There's love and devotion. There's some lust thrown in there, and, you know, friendship, or kind of, those are like four words. Um,
Right.
whereas in Sanskrit, there are, you know, they've got a dozen,
Uh-huh.
you know, a lot of different
Yeah.
words, a lot of different words for love. And bring us back to the psychedelic experience, you know, so many people discover new levels of being in love with themselves and the world,
Uh-huh.
and seem uncomfortable about talking about it. One, because love is not prioritized in our culture, and often gets confused with lust or sexuality. And also, you know, we don't, the words almost don't fit. You know,
Right.
we want more words for them.
That's something I was thinking about today because I remember having certain experiences. I was thinking specifically about a pretty powerful ayahuasca ceremony that I had that, like, afterwards I came out of it with a kind of like a real love for myself in a way that I don't normally experience, and in a way that there's like friction around in our culture. You know, like everybody's always saying love yourself, but then there's also a lot of down putting on being too vain or being too egotistical or whatever. But this was like,
Mm-hmm.
I remember this period of time, and I don't feel like this all the time, that's for sure. But during this period of time, I was like really stoked on like who I was. Like I like had like a crush on myself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like directly from whatever work was underwent during that ayahuasca ceremony. But
Mm-hmm.
like it came out of it like actually knowing what it feels like to love yourself. Like I thought I was cool. You know what I mean? And it's like
Yeah.
like I liked myself, you know, but like
It's a revolutionary act.
but people dismiss that, or people put that down, and
Mm-hmm.
if you act that way, people say you're being egotistical or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what is self-love really? Like what does that look like, you know, if not that? Because like kids do that, right? Like kids, most kids I think have a kind of like, before it's crushed out, have a kind
Mm-hmm.
of a healthy form of self-love that's like that, like it's not narcissistic, it's just a appreciation of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like River, there's a net bag with suction cups in the bathroom, and
Mm.
like he has figured out how to open the bag with one hand and put, you know, he's got like little bath toys, like he's got like a neti pot and stuff, you know, some other things.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he can open it with one hand, put the neti pot in it with the other, and then he turns around like, that's right, I did that.
Yeah.
Like he is
And like
stoked.
why can't adults be like that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is there judgment around that, you know?
Yeah. Unless you're like, and then the people who can get away with it, the person I'm thinking of right now is like Freddie Mercury. You know,
Okay.
it's like I picture Freddie Mercury on stage and he just knows he's killing it, and he lets us know that he knows that he's killing it, and he thinks he's freaking awesome. And we love that. But then he had to die. So it's
Yeah.
like, is there
Well,
something in the archetype of like, if you're too great and you appreciate yourself too much, then you can't stick around?
right. Well, I mean, with Freddie Mercury, I also think about like the lyric from Bohemian Rhapsody. It's, sometimes I wish I'd never been born at all, and I wonder if he actually thought that. So, you know, could have.
Well, you know how the mind is.
He
We all
probably
think a
didn't
lot of
feel that
things.
great. We sure do. Yeah.
You know, it's like I can, yeah, and that can turn. That's the thing, is that that kind of thing can turn on a dime, especially in a psychedelic space.
Yeah.
Like I can really feel like I am connected to the one, and I'm just sort of like, you know, the savior of the universe, and then have one low thought, and then I'm dirt again.
Uh-huh.
You know, and then just rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Pretty much. Then you think you lost your backpack, and then the whole next 6 hours is a mission to try to find it. Then you realize you never lost it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then you're back to the oneness.
You're back to the oneness. Yeah, I thought I lost my keys at one of the, like the 30th anniversary of the Summer of Love. Lori had them. And she showed up right at the end of the concert. So, you know, it's like you could have just had fun.
Some of the best psychedelic experiences I had is like 12 hours of thinking I lost shit, you know, just trying to find stuff I never actually lost. That was the best trips of my life.
Well, you can meet interesting people that way.
You can. But then you find other people that are also tripping, and you somehow paranoid them into thinking they lost stuff. And then before you know it, there's just this whole kerfuffle where everybody's freaked out about their belongings.
I mean, that's a real, that's the work of the goddess Eris right there. You're just channeling
Eris?
You know, the goddess of discord.
Oh, I don't know that goddess.
You don't know? You haven't read the Principia Discordia?
No.
Oh, it's one of my main religious texts.
I love the name.
Yeah, she is the one that started the Trojan War. So there's something that's known as the original snub, is that she was not in, right? Kind of like original sin, the original snub. And there was this party for like all of the Greek gods. And they didn't invite Eris because, well, she's the goddess of discord. You know, and she's sort of like, she creates hassles wherever she goes.
I know people like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a real thing that she has her acolytes. So what she did is she took a golden apple, and so sometimes like high-ranking members of the church, you know, of Discord, are known as the Golden Apple Corps. You know, sometimes it's spelled CORE, and sometimes it's spelled CORP, right? The Golden Apple Corps. And so she took this golden apple and she wrote "for the prettiest one" on it. You know, whoever is the prettiest person can have this apple. And then she threw it into the party, and then all the goddesses fought over it. And it got messy and ended up in like the Trojan War. And like, that's the reason that we have like Homer's Odyssey. Yeah.
Goddesses fighting over who's the prettiest one. Sounds like Bali.
Right. And what does that look like? How does that play out? How is Bali these days?
How is Bali these days? Pretty chill. I mean, nothing externally really happening, and a lot, but it's very safe, and feels. I feel like I'm in a good place. Like, there are people who are close to me that I've been leaving, and that feel like it's not the place to be. But I feel pretty secure in my decision to be here right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going to have to be there one winter.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think that they've now reopened or are in the process of reopening the borders so that foreign travelers can come here again.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been on, the island's been shut down for months and months and months, which has both positive and negative sides to it. I think it's hard for the local economy, but it's also nice to have less people, less traffic, things like that.
Sure. Sure. I mean, I'm just excited to, it gets very cold here in the winter.
Mm.
And, I'm just excited to like have River see the world.
Yeah, totally.
I'm excited for him to see warm places.
Right. Yeah, I think something that's cool about this time is that it has kind of emphasized community in a way. Like anybody that's here is actually
Hmm.
here. They're not transient. It's like people that actually have decided to live here. So there is a deeper sense of community that I've felt
Hmm.
being here in these times.
Right. And is there a way that it's really supported your work?
Mm, I think about that sometimes because there's not much of an arts community here, and
Hmm.
I mean, inspiration comes in a lot of forms. It comes both internally and externally, and I'm good at sort of generating my own inspiration, my own, you know, inner worlds and things like that. But
Hmm.
I do miss being inspired by museums or galleries or being around other artists who are working on inspiring projects and things like that. There's like a few artists here, and there's some good ones, but I'm all actually
Hmm.
often discovering new ones that are here that are just kind of like, you know, hermiting it up somewhere in their villas. But it's not like there's not as much energy and excitement around art here as in other places I've been to. I miss being around
Hmm.
other artists and to be around a culture and community and scene for that and to be like electrified with that.
Yeah, the Bay Area was really rich like that.
It was for sure, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and
It
I
was
love that
really
about it.
exciting.
Yeah.
It was really exciting. And, all of even the festival scenes, like, the fact that
Hmm.
there would be festivals where they would build like an amphitheater just so you could watch people paint.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's kind of amazing.
I was painting at those things like all the time. Like every
Hmm.
week there was something, and it was like a huge, it was amazing. Yeah, I miss that a lot, but I don't even know where that's happening in the world at all right now. I
No,
don't
not
know if
so
that's
much.
happening at all. Yeah. So it's not
Well,
just here, it's like everywhere is like that a bit.
yeah. Although, in our event in April, a little plug for anybody who's watching is we're having the Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration Family All-Star Jamboree is happening from April 16th to the 18th. And we have been talking to the Vision Train about doing some live painting. And of
Is it
course,
a
you're
so
invited.
it's a digital event?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. I mean, I'm happy that there's stuff like that happening, and the Vision Train's great. Shout out to the Vision Train. But you
Choo
know,
choo.
but it's not this. It's not quite the same. It's
Oh,
not the
absolutely.
same
Obviously.
as
Hmm.
like Bicycle Day with like 100 artists painting, and there's like Mars One and Alex Gray working on like a 9 foot canvas, and
Hmm.
Tipper and all that good stuff. Those were
Yes.
the golden days. This is the golden days of the psychedelic, the modern psychedelic era. But I have
It was
great
really, really
faith.
nice.
I think there will that will reemerge Phoenix like
Oh, of
eventually.
course. Yeah, with like a vengeance.
Yeah.
With whatever
Well,
the
like
positive corollary of vengeance is. Enthusiasm, with great enthusiasm.
with a lot yeah, there needs to be a better word than just enthusiasm. Something that like moxie. There's a lot of moxie. But yeah, like Entheon is gonna open, and there's gonna be
Yes.
I mean that'll happen eventually, and there's gonna be like a huge event for that, I think, with like all kinds
Hmm.
of artists, like an army of live painters and awesome party, and I want to be there.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I'm
only
excited.
70 minutes from it.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like a lot of hours, like a 32 hour, like 4 different plane flights away from that, but I'll make it happen.
Right on. Yeah, it'll be available when it's available. Yeah, it's the kind of thing I'm almost tempted just to kind of go and peek my head in, or maybe,
You just show
help
up on the
shovel.
property and like you get like sent away by like security.
By security,
Sorry,
which is, I mean, but the security are just guys that look like us.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much security there.
Yeah.
They used to have this guy Ruby that was this like gigantic black Paris fashion artist who wore
Oh,
these
yeah, we're Facebook
turbans.
friends.
He's
That guy's
trained
fabulous.
in like psychic defense. He was warding off psychic attacks against Alex and Allison. He was awesome. He was cool.
Which is important because they were getting them. I remember when they first opened in Chelsea, and there were none of the paintings were even on the walls yet. Like not even all of the kind of the fancy construction. There were like archways, like they were half done. And it was one of the full moon gatherings, and it was really wonderful. And they're up there and they're talking about their vision and what they're going to do. And some young girl who's like, if this is really visionary artists, it should be of the people, and people should just be able to show up and like paint on the walls whatever they want, whenever they want, and it should be free and open. And whatever she said, you could see that it just like bummed Alex out. He was just sad about it. There was this I don't know when Chelsea first opened. This was 15 years ago maybe.
It's like the 90s. Yeah.
And he was just kind of like, oh, he got psychically attacked. And, I tried to make him feel better. Some other people tried to make him feel better. It's like, we believe in his vision and stuff like that. So it's good to have somebody trained in that kind of thing.
You ever read Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune?
Yes.
There's like it's like the whole technical methodology for like warding against psychic attacks.
That is
which
amazing.
as a public figure like yourself could be a good thing to know. People become envious
like yourself.
Well, I do a lot of banishing rituals.
I do a lot of banishing rituals. And
you should whip out that ankh that you showed me earlier.
I don't want to put it on camera.
Okay. That's fair.
I'll give a shout out to Ankara. So my friend Ankara Akeru is an Ankh alchemist, and he makes these. And so this episode brought to you by Ankara Akeru's Cosmic Roots Creation. And so he sort of, you go through an intake, and then he decides what's best for you. And, because it's green is good for me astrologically. So I've got adventurine and prehnite and jadeite, and there's some shungite there and some smoky quartz. And then this is a fossilized sea sponge at the bottom, and he balances it out. And there's a Herkimer diamond in the front. And so he just sort of he figures out what you need. He kind of reads your deal and puts something together that is sort of balanced and empowering. And I like it a lot. It's and it's different. I see other people's ankhs, and they look like they're good for them, and I feel like mine is good for me. And so if that's something that is interesting to you, and I don't know if I'm really using it to kind of ward off psychic attacks. I don't really feel like I'm under psychic attack at the moment. But,
because of the ankh.
I guess it's because of the ankh. Right. What was that joke that said, Jesus was supposed to, eradicate all evil, and Thor was supposed to eradicate the frost giants? I mean, I don't see any frost giants.
No frost giants. It's true.
So like, who's really more effective?
That is really cool ankh, though, I gotta say.
Maybe I'll get you one for your birthday.
That'd be nice. I'd like that. It's coming up.
So psychic self-defense, how do you practice it?
By staying aligned with my purpose and trying not to let other people's opinions or thoughts about me get me down. I find the more aligned I am with my own purpose, the less I care about what people seem to think, which is
right.
a form of psychic self-defense in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I find that, you know, one of my teachers, because I am into Raja Yoga, told me that, you know, the best defense is yama and niyama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Like
I agree.
if you're doing yama and niyama, then you're sort of, it's hard for anybody to get their hooks in you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad, who's I guess perhaps a semi-enlightened yogi in his own right, would tell me you can't cheat an honest man. And so,
yeah, I mean, at the same time, like all my tattoos are, you know, talismanic in nature, and there's a lot of protection prayers and mantras and spells all over my body. So there's that too. And I do a lot of things like, you know, banishing rituals and things like that. Also, ways to seal the aura, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, it's one thing to figure out, you know, oh, it feels like I'm having some sort of beef with somebody, or there's some sort of dark entity that's coming at me, and worrying about like that, like, oh, the dark entity, whatever, it's coming at me. I'm kind of more interested in what's the vulnerability that they're exploiting? You know, it's like, how did that
I don't
little
know though,
vibe
man.
get
Like
in?
I've had experiences with what you could call dark entities though, that were pretty tangible, that seemed like there was something there that wasn't just like not just of my own mind, I guess you could say, but felt like something else.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yes. So there are creepy crawlies out there, but and then, you know, whatever we're going to do with them, we're going to do with them. But I'm like really interested in like, how did they get in, and then how do I seal that up with lots of love? Like, how do I use love and light and positive energy to kind of just sort of like plug the hole?
Well, it's like do you remember the Patronus spell from Harry Potter?
Vaguely.
Okay, so
I'm not as like up at the lore as maybe I could be.
Different generations, I get it, but there is the Dementors. They're like these, you know, Grim Reaper ghoul things that like steal your soul, and like when they're around, it's just all of the most horrible emotions and feelings come out, and it's just everything feels like despair and awfulness. And there's the spell to protect yourself against them, which is the Patronus spell, which is that you need to access like your purest, most loving memory. And if you can fill yourself with the sensation of like the purest memory that you have of love, then you can project that out, and that overwhelms the Dementor. And there's some valuable metaphor in that, right?
Yeah.
So like if you have the experience of a dark entity, whether that is like a thought in your mind, or if that's like something that seems like, you know, a creepy crawly spirit, as you called it, if you can project love in the direction of that, and if you can hold on to some kind of deep memory of love or peace or gratitude or whatever it is, that actually works, you know.
It does seem to work.
And some people access that through like thinking of, you know, Jesus or the Buddha or someone like that, like whatever your highest ideal of light is, you know.
Well, and I think that in a lot of ways, one of the things that's interesting for me is that those memories, for me, are designed to evoke a felt sense and a vibrational quality of being.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
totally.
and it's just really interesting to me that, you know, the thought on its own is one thing. It's sort of like when people say, oh, I get up in the morning and make a gratitude list. And it's like, that's good if it actually engenders the gratitude, you know, and if you
Mhm.
can get to the gratitude anyway, you don't need the list. You know, what's the
Right.
point? It's like, yeah, yes, I'm grateful for my friends and my family and my health and my happiness. But if that's just like blah, 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 like is that's not as good as just like beaming it with no list.
Right. That's what I prefer to do. I like doing like a gratitude meditation where I think of
Mm-hmm.
experiences I've had in my life that I'm just absolutely, totally in awe of and grateful for having experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And the memory of that and like putting myself there, that's a lot stronger than being like, oh, I'm grateful I have money to eat today and stuff, which like I am grateful for that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's different. There's like a different heart feeling. It produces a
Yeah.
different vibration, as you were saying.
Well, you know what it says in the Yoga Sutras, again, not to harp on the Yoga Sutras, but I love it. They say that our practice bears fruit when done regularly. That's one. Over a long
Mm-hmm.
period of time. That's two.
Mm-hmm.
With the right attitude, with devotion,
Mm-hmm.
in the right
Yeah.
mood.
Yeah. And to speak also, you were talking about yoga versus ceremonial magic or whatever. I think like just that is enough. Like whatever you do, like do
Mm-hmm.
that, but do that with Taoism, do that, but do that with Buddhism, do that, but do that with,
Mm-hmm.
magic, whatever it is, but just do that, but take those ingredients
Yeah.
and you'll be good. Be devoted, have an attitude of devotion towards it, things like that.
And show up.
Show up,
And you
yeah,
know,
do the work.
and this thing is what I often, this is one of my big instructions for my psychedelic integration clients, you know, because people have these amazing experiences, you know, and there's often this, you know, it drops off. People have these amazing experiences and they find some healing for themselves and a new way of being in the world. And then eventually it drops off. And I think that what is missing is that they're losing touch with that vibratory quality, that felt sense.
Right.
And so trying to get people to actually spend some time in a meditation, you know, and they say, oh, I meditate. And it's some random practice that they learned from a yoga teacher in Schenectady. Um, Apologies to all the yoga teachers in Schenectady. I'm sure you're very sincere.
Especially
Um,
the random ones.
yeah, the random, well, there are no random yoga teachers. Um, is how, you know, can you just meditate on staying connected? Like, you know, forget all this other stuff. It's like meditate on that, like cultivate that, generate that vibration and see if it
Yeah.
sticks around longer than if you don't,
I
you
like
know?
the magical practice of invocation, which is like you can invoke basically anything. Like you can invoke a god or goddess or a god form or something like that, but you can also invoke enthusiasm, you can invoke
Mm-hmm.
love, you can invoke gratitude, and you can use the same formula. It's like you're really just demanding of the universe that you call that frequency into yourself and you become like a radio antenna that you've dialed to that particular frequency and it works and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's powerful, you know. I really think you can do it with anything. It doesn't have to be a particular god or goddess, but like if you need clarity, you can invoke
Mm-hmm.
clarity. If you feel uh, challenged, you can invoke ease. Like there's no limit to it.
Yes. And I love that you threw the word demand in there, because sometimes in like the new agey communities, there's just so much like go with the flow. It's like, oh, like the universe will just take
That's
me
not
where
my
it wants me
style.
to go.
That didn't work for me. That
Yeah,
like
it doesn't
it
work for
just
me either.
doesn't. It's like I was broke and unhappy, and that didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And, you know, I talk to people who are broken, unhappy, you know, and they're like, oh, I just want a woman who likes me for me. And I was like, well, don't you
Yet
understand? You
that
can
didn't
be
work for me
anybody you
either.
want. Well, you know, it's like me neither. And I was like, well, I could, but this is at the beginning, we were talking about how our identities are irrelevant. You know, they're arbitrary. You can just be
Uh-huh.
anybody you want. Just be somebody who
Absolutely.
attracts the kind of woman that you want to be with.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's something I like about chaos magic is the idea of belief shifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, I want to have money, but I think money is the root of all evil. Like there's a lot of these kinds of like cognitive dissonances with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be broke, but I also don't want to feel attracted to making money. I don't want to be greedy, whatever. So it's like you have to belief shift. You have to then change your
Mm-hmm.
orientation towards it. It's the only way to really
Yeah.
get what you want. And yeah, chaos magic comes with the same understanding, which is that inherently we are none of those things. We're not our beliefs, we're not our ideas about ourselves. So you can believe and be and do whatever you want. It doesn't change your essence, which is
Mm-hmm.
way beyond that. But
Yeah.
that's been an effective
Double your
practice for
misery
me.
back if it doesn't work.
Double your misery back?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You know, it's like, well, that's what somebody told me once. They were like, try it. If it doesn't work, we'll give you your misery back.
Oh
We'll
yeah.
refund your misery. We'll refund your misery if the practice doesn't work. You know, it's like, what do you got to lose?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I've been really motivated with exercise over the last few months and like going to the gym a lot and stuff. But I've always like had this idea of like, oh, I hate exercising, or I'm not athletic, or I don't like that, or like I judge guys that do that or
The
whatever.
people
But
who
like,
do that are this.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I had to belief shift. I got to be like, no, like I have to change my orientation around it. I got to be somebody that loves going to the gym and like who loves exercising. And yeah, so I've been
Mhm.
working on that, and now I really enjoy it. But it's like I am not a guy who either enjoys or doesn't enjoy exercise. I am a soul that is like way beyond all these different
Mm-hmm.
personality things. But I can, for my own benefit, play the role of somebody that loves to exercise and likes to eat healthily, because I'm happier if I do that.
Well, you know, we're all, you know, we're killing time. You know, when it comes down to it, it's like the body is here for the duration. It's got it. You got to come up with something for it to do. You know, it's like, what is the thing that, you know, is apparently the most joyful? You know, what's the thing that it just sort of wants to do? And again, you
It
know,
likes
like you're
to
saying, it's
move,
arbitrary.
apparently.
Yeah. Apparently it likes to move. Let it move. Let it run around and paint things. Like it's like it can do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
I like, there's something clarifying. We're talking about clarity too. Something clarifying for me about using the third person. You know, in reference to, you know, Ramana Maharshi would do it. He would talk about this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, it changes like a different orientation towards yourself.
Mm-hmm. This one. Well, there's that old Crowley practice where you try not to use first person pronouns.
Yeah, and you cut your arm every time you do.
Yeah, I mean, I did it for a while. I just bit my knuckle. I just bit my thumb.
Uh-huh.
Like not even very hard, but I wasn't really ready to just cut my forearm.
Right. Some of his techniques are a bit extreme.
I mean, if you bite down on your thumb every time you use the first person pronoun, it still works.
I bet it works.
It still is not pleasant. Just, you know,
But
with the benefit of
that same book, I forget which Lieber it is, but like yeah, that was an interesting one. He was talking about also, he was like, and this comes down to that belief shifting idea. But yeah, that was a particularly interesting exercise that Crowley formulated, which is like, think about two different identities, like, and that are opposed to each other, and you will be only able to think thoughts that are in accordance with this personality. So like say just simplistically, like say one is like Democrat and one is Republican, or something like that, like things that we consider to be opposed. One is a vegan, one eats meat, something like that, you know? And you can't think any thoughts that are outside of what that identity would think. And it was for a particular period of time, like between on a certain day or between certain hours of a day. And then to discipline yourself to do that, like he would use that, like the cutting of your arm every time you thought something outside the bounds of that. But like he thought that you could legitimately discipline yourself to be different people. And actually, if you look at who he was like different people. There's all these different names that he used, like Frater Perturbato, to Megatherian, VVVVVVV, like, you know, all these different names, the Great Beast, and they're like different, they're like legitimately different people. You know, the qualities that were emanated from those different personalities are very different and even opposed to each other. So maybe he was doing that successfully.
Yeah, I think I'll be a flat earther for the rest of the podcast.
Okay, try it. Try to be a flat earther for like a day or a week, and I
did it for a couple of days, and I had to quit it. It was hurting. It was actually hurting my brain. It hurt
be
my
a flat earther, and then be like a cold hard scientific materialist rationalist, and then try to oscillate between those two different belief structures as a mental experiment.
Right.
See if you can do it like every other day. Or it was like you had to wear a ring on a certain finger. I don't remember exactly the practice, but it was like if you're wearing a ring on this finger, it means that you think this. If it's on the other finger, it means you think this.
Right. It's almost like band t-shirts. You could do it with band t-shirts.
You could do it with band t-shirts for sure.
Be like, this is my favorite band.
Well,
you just be the number one fan of whatever band you happen to be wearing the t-shirt of.
That's some serious practice right there. Like trying to make yourself really love a band that you actually really hate. Like me really trying to love Insane Clown Posse or something like that that'd be a serious spiritual practice. That would be some real sadhana.
Yeah, I want to see on your Instagram you in like the clown makeup.
No. I don't want to see that. No one wants to see that.
Except me, I guess. I guess I'm not enough. I'm not enough of a draw. You'll get one like on that picture. It'll be me. Yeah, like really whip up the enthusiasm for things.
It's just like the idea that all of even our likes and dislikes or orientations are arbitrary and fabricated. So that we could theoretically, through practice, consciously endeavor to like things or dislike things intentionally that are different or opposed to our personality structures as they are now, and what we believe we like and dislike.
You know, I was sitting for somebody once in their home, and they had like all of their shit around. And at one point, they got up, they looked around, and they were like, whose stuff is this?
Oh.
It was like, none of this stuff has anything to do with me at all. Like, I don't even know why it's here. I don't know why I put that there. Like, who put that there? Like, it was really interesting that they had just, you know, kind of created, you know, an arbitrary decor.
Right.
That like when they kind of sunk underneath it or beyond it, it all just sort of like fell apart, like their identity. Right, because that's what the Buddhists say, is that the identity is you know, these likes and dislikes are there to build the ego. You know, if we don't like something, like if you know, if you like Coke and I like Pepsi, then we know we exist in that conflict.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I feel like most people are like, whose stuff is this? Like most people just kind of ride on the coattails of the cultural programming, and that's it. They just get the package, and they don't really attempt to hone in on what is their own unique essence of what they actually like and dislike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of rare to meet somebody who really understands what it is they really like and dislike.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like.
I've got a feeling I'm going to stick with like flannel till I die. I think I can trust, like, I feel like I can trust my appreciation of flannel.
I mean, good, you know, like for now, at least my entire wardrobe is black. So I don't have to think a lot about what color I'm going to wear.
Right.
But there might be a time where I, you know, wear other colors. Could be a thing at some point in my life.
Right. It might be an interesting practice. I mean, what would, you know, I mean, when we're talking about this sort of, you know, flipping things on their head, you know, it's like Monday, today's Monday, right? It's the moon day. The color is white. You know, what if you did a moon practice where you wore white on Mondays? Red on Tuesdays, green on Wednesdays.
Yeah. I read this book recently by Aidan Wachter. He's a really great like teacher on magic. He has his own very unique approach to it. But he was talking about just deciding things like this, and that making little changes to your habits could ripple out into like really big changes into your life. So for example, just deciding that you don't use nickels. Like every time a nickel, like you get nickel back in the change and you're like, you have to like toss it away. Like you're like, I can't. Or like if you notice that you always sleep on a particular side of the bed, which I do and I have for like years, you just sleep on the other side of the bed or things like that. Like there's things that we do so habitually, like we put our shoes on the same way every day. And it's kind of like all these different, these like micro habits create our macro reality. So if you want to change your macro reality, you need to change the micro habits and become aware of them. And it can sometimes actually really loosen things up for being able to make big changes in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Just by like changing what order you put your shoes on or things like this.
I was talking that's one of the practices. I think in the IoT, you have to sort of make you have to do some of that shape shifting.
Yeah, I would imagine that's something there.
And I was talking to a guy who decided he made himself like bananas. I've recently become a person who only says autumn. I don't say the other one. No.
The other one. The
I don't say the other one. I don't say the F word. You know, unless it's the verb being used in different, you know, people fall down, but that's a different thing. Because I now live in a place that has seasons. You know, I spent the past while in a place with no seasons, and now autumn is here. You know, autumn is a thing. It's gorgeous here.
Autumn is the superior word by far. Like just in terms of how it sounds and how it feels and how it looks, it's significantly nicer. Yeah, yeah, it's a total upgrade.
So that was one of my shape shifts.
Right on. Do you think people listening to this are like, I thought this was like about art and psychedelics and talking about all kinds of other things?
Well, it's free.
You get what you pay for. If you want the focused podcast about art and psychedelics, you gotta pay, you know, good quality money for
Join my Patreon.
We're gonna have a conversation on Patreon that's only about art and psychedelics.
Yep.
Stay real focused.
Just kind of bizarre, small, magical practices that may or may not, you know, change your life for the better.
Yeah, tell you go a week without touching a nickel, your life will change.
I mean, I did really enjoy in Prometheus Rising the quarter manifesting practice.
I remember reading about that. Can you refresh my memory though?
Well, it's about the way we think about things.
Right.
You know, it's like, decide that it's a big world and there are plenty of quarters laying around. And so you're just bound to come upon one eventually. and then see how many you find.
Mhm.
And then after some time, decide that you, in all of your magnetic glory, can just manifest quarters, and then go out into the world and see how many you find.
Mhm. And to see, then to look at that and to see the information that's presented, see if you actually do end up finding more quarters, right? That's kind of the
Yeah, based on
experiment.
one or the other. Yeah.
Right.
If
Yeah,
you want to
cool.
know the results that I had, join my Patreon.
You could do
For a
the
quarter.
experiment with your whole Patreon.
Right.
That'd be a good thing to do on Patreon.
Indeed.
Everybody's
Manifest.
getting rich off, like, Bitcoin. You guys are just finding a lot of quarters, though. Guaranteed to find more quarters if you sign up for Daniel's Patreon.
Maybe you'll find a quarter of a Bitcoin.
That would be really nice. Can you imagine you just find a piece of paper with somebody's wallet details written on it? There's like $1 million worth of Bitcoin in there.
We should just go to how many like old laptops you have to buy at Goodwill.
Oh,
to score
the way
a Bitcoin.
you're thinking about this. Yeah.
I mean, that's where they are. Well, that's where the lost Bitcoin are, right?
Think about how many millions and millions of dollars worth of crypto is just totally inaccessible because somebody lost the wallet keys to get into it. Like, there's like
I've blown some crypto.
Ungodly sums of money out there that no one can touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when EOS was a thing, when EOS was on the Ethereum network for a while, and then it went to become its own coin. And you had to sort of port your Ethereum EOS over to the EOS network using some ridiculously annoying process that was too complicated for this poor old dummy. And I lost my EOS.
But at least it's not like you just forgot how to get into your wallet or what kind of wallet. I mean, like, I know people like that were like, I'm pretty sure I bought Bitcoin like years ago and I have no idea how to get it and I don't know how much it's worth. And
I think there's one guy who has, a couple $1 million in Bitcoin, and he has one more chance to get his password right before it locks him out forever.
Oh God. Can you imagine, like, so you could hire like the best hackers in the world and you're like, I'll give you 10% of what I got if you can just help me get into my wallet.
Yeah.
That would be the move right there. That's what I would do.
Yeah. That is what I would do. I hope you're still holding Dogecoin with diamond hands. I'm
not. I never had Dogecoin. I don't think I've ever had any Dogecoin. I like watch, I'm a bystander.
Right.
I like watching all the crypto go up and go down and then go up and go down. And I like watching people's enthusiasm and despair in cycles. Keeps me tapped into the pulse,
Right.
But I don't like feeling the enthusiasm and despair as much. So I'd rather just watch other people go through.
Sure. It's not a bad way to go.
It's less stress.
Right. So we could do this forever. Maybe we should start doing, Patreon only podcasts or something, but we should wrap soon. What have you not told the people yet that you feel like you need them to know?
They should listen to my podcast. I don't know if they know that I have a podcast.
Tell us all about it.
I have a podcast.
Is it the one that I was on, or is it a different one?
Same one that you were on. Yeah. But now we have, there's 52 episodes published so far.
Wow.
So it's really developed. It's called The Quarantine Sessions with Jake Kobrin. You can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And it's, I talk a lot with people who are like occult writers and artists and psychedelic figures and things like that. And it's been a lot of fun. We started it at the beginning of, or I started at the beginning of the lockdown last year, and it's been a cool medium to be able to facilitate deep conversation in this time of distance and isolation. But yeah, I don't know what else. Not much burning share. Would appreciate if you wanted to come by my Instagram and give me a shout. Check out some of my art.
Yes. Cool. Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. Stick around a minute.
Pleasure.
We're gonna say goodbye to the people, and then we can debrief.
Okay, sounds good.
So folks, if you're still with us, this has been Instrumental Breakthroughs. Usually a conversation about psychedelics and creativity. Today, a conversation about magical practice. I am your host, Daniel Shankin of Tam Integration. We offer, psychedelic integration support. Again, please visit our co-producers, deadheadland.com and Livestream Remote. And of course, our guest, Jake Kobrin, whose website is probably jakekobrin.com.
jakekobrinportal.com is the best because I have a lot of links to a lot of different places on there.
Amazing. jakekobrinportal.com. Thank you so much. And happy autumn.
My pleasure. Thanks for